restrictions diminished, again, in the hope that over time some of them might disappear. I think the hope that the European Union would give up entirely on European law applying to some elements in Northern Ireland is unlikely, given what the British government conceded in the protocol, but we can make progress on that, and I think that both sides will want to see the Northern Ireland Assembly up and running, because that's the best guarantee to political stability and a reduction in violence.
Authorities in Italy say 58 people have died after a ship got into difficulties off the country's south coast. It's reported that the boat left from Turkey and was carrying migrants from Somalia, Pakistan and Afghanistan. 27 bodies were found on a beach in the southern region of Calabria, and more were found in the water after the boat crashed against rocks during rough seas. 81 people have survived. 22 of them are now in hospital. Police in Northern Ireland have arrested a sixth person in connection with the attempted murder of an off-duty police officer in Omagh. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was at a sports event with his son on Wednesday when he was shot. He remains critically ill in hospital. Labour is calling for ministers to label the Wagner Group as a terror organisation. Shadow Foreign and Home Secretaries are accusing the Russian mercenary group of committing appalling atrocities. The move would make it a criminal offence to belong to the private military contractor, attend its meetings or encourage support. Members have been fighting alongside the Russian forces in eastern Ukraine. Well, back here, social housing managers will be required to study for qualifications to drive up standards following the death of a 2-year-old boy. Awab Ishak died in December 2020 from a respiratory condition caused by mould at his home in Rochdale. Housing Secretary Michael Gove announced the response after acknowledging that social housing residents are being inexcusably let down. Housing expert Richard Blanco says the move should protect vulnerable tenants, but there's more still to be done.
One of my concerns is that, I want this to trickle down to frontline housing officers, because they're often the ones that are going out and doing the visits. And indeed, I'd like to see more visits, because what we've found since COVID is that a lot of the work has been done remotely, and housing officers have not been going out enough to actually meet tenants and see with their own eyes what's going on.
And a popular beach in Norfolk could be closed for decades, according to locals, after cliff erosion has made the area unsafe. The beach at Hemsby, near Great Yarmouth, has lost more than 10 feet of land in just 2 days. The local lifeboat crew have had to close the shore over safety concerns. Local businesses warn they'll be significantly impacted, as the beach is their main source of income during the summer. They're calling on the government to step in and help. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It is fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Live and leave alone. Here we go again. Cancelling things that were acceptable back in the day but are seen by some in a negative light now. Last week it was Roald Dahl. This week it's Ian Fleming's turn. Ian was the creator and author of one of the greatest spies that ever lived. OK, no, he wasn't real. But every man I know wanted to be him, and nearly every woman I know would have been more than happy to be his love interest or his arch nemesis. It is, of course, the global sensation, James Bond. Ian Fleming Publications, which is the company that owns the rights, commissioned a review by sensitivity readers. Why, I hear you ask? Nobody's offended. If they don't like the books, they can just read another one. Some of the changes to Ian's books include in the 1954 Live and Let Die, Bond called African criminals pretty law-abiding chaps, I should have thought, except when they've drunk too much. This has now become pretty law-abiding chaps, I should have thought. Really? A scene in a strip club has been changed from Bond could hear the audience panting and grunting like pigs at the trough. He felt his own hands gripping the tablecloth, his mouth was dry, to Bond could sense the electric tension in the room. Really? The whole point of a book is to be descriptive, so readers can paint a picture in their minds with your words, with their words. I'm not even offended by the use of language that is racist in the books, because that is what was written by the author, and that was how society was at the time, a stark reminder as to how far we've come. After all, the books were written in the 50s. And once you start on this path, it's easy to get carried away, which is what I believe has happened here. In many instances in the books, they have dropped references to ethnicity altogether. Why? Well, in my view, the truth is, this was about money, and the stark reality that some of the language in the books would stop people from buying them. And I also think that they've seen the effect that the so-called clean-up had on Roald Dahl's books, and they thought they'd have a go as well. Even though it has been disclosed that Dahl, who died in 1990, had 40 years previously warned that he would not write another word if his publishers ever changed his language, and that he would send an enormous crocodile to gobble them up if they dared, which is a bit like me and my monologues. I mean, next thing you know, they'll be turning James Bond's character woke as well. I mean, why do they have to keep spoiling things? They went woke with Doctor Who on the BBC. Well, that was a disaster. People don't want an agenda pushed at them all the time. James Bond, in my eyes, is a worldwide phenomenon that was not taken in an offensive manner at the time by those it was now alleged to offend. Why can't they just gold finger off and just live and leave alone? Well, there you go. Right, before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak preparing to sell off our sovereignty? The Prime Minister is set to scrap Boris's Northern Ireland Protocol bill as part of his new deal with Brussels. Sunak believes that he has secured fundamental legal changes that render the bill designed to give the government power to rip up parts of the protocol. But in a sign of the growing rebellion, Northern Ireland Minister Steve Baker is understood to be on resignation watch after being frozen out of the negotiations. And at 4:50, it's World View. It's been over a year since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Reports suggest that Vladimir Putin is planning a spring offensive. It comes as many European countries and the US have agreed to send tanks to Ukraine, which are expected to arrive in the coming weeks. And in the US, former President Donald Trump visited the site of a train derailment, criticising President Joe Biden's handling of a disaster that spewed toxic chemicals into East Palestine, Ohio. And rare snow has covered parts of California as a slow-moving winter storm intensifies. That's coming up. And then at 5 o'clock, it's this week's Outside. Now, my mystery celebrity guest has had a very interesting career. She started out on MI6 before becoming a television icon. She has been a presenter of a hit television series that went stateside. Can anyone guess who that might be? Well, that's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think and everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. So, right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel, broadcaster and columnist, Danny Kelly. You're not a broadcaster.
No. I'm not a columnist either.
Yes, broadcaster
and journalist.
He's an international salesman extraordinaire.
Oh, we should have said
He's
that.
the backbone of Britain. He's a small businessman. Well,
a self-employed entrepreneur.
Yes, exactly. He's what keeps
people.
this country going, and you can't get that right.
Small businessman.
Well,
not by sight, obviously.
Oh, that's the earliest yet.
It's good, isn't it?
That's the
Christine
earliest.
Hamilton, author of broadcaster, and also Danny Kelly, a broadcaster and journalist. 007, James Bond, didn't you want to be him?
When I was a kid and a toddler, I was a fat little, as you can imagine, and my nickname was Odd Job. Odd Job was the Korean baddie in 1964.
Did you have no hair then?
Gold. Of course not. I was a baby and a toddler. Maybe thin hair, whatever. And so that was my nickname because I was fat. I must have looked Korean. I don't know, but that was for the 1964 Goldfinger thing. I think they should just leave it alone. I really think they should leave it alone. All of the M words, they should stick with them. All of the disparaging comments about ethnicity, they should stick with them. And people should be exposed to what the gritty reality of 1950 and 1960. My father tells me when he was growing up as a kid in Liverpool, there was an African guy who came over and there was a billboard, and I'm not going to say what it was, but nowadays, and that was advertising for him so people would go and see his show. I'll tell you when we're off air, but that was the reality of 1940s Liverpool and 1950s Liverpool.
So I don't see the
Keep
problem.
it.
Keep it. Christine.
I disagree about... I mean, to me, some words I think should be excised, like the N-word, I'm afraid. I really do. But this whole woke rewriting of books, it's like the Victorians putting little skirts over piano legs because they were thought to be too sort of sexy. It is absurd. What Bond now needs is what Roald Dahl had, because they are now accepting that all the Roald Dahl books are going to be published in their original, and that's because of 00 Queen Camilla, who came riding to the rescue. So what we need is Queen Camilla to drop another...
I think she's a patron of one of the charities as well.
Well, she's into books, isn't she? Her charity is reading and learning.
But Christine, why remove the N-word? Why in particular? Because that's how he wrote it. That's how it was accepted.
I fully accept that you might... a purist would say leave the whole thing as it is. I just personally do find that word pretty offensive.
Yes,
and
but that's your personal view about that particular word.
OK, leave it. But the whole...
Well, that was easy.
I'm just saying I disagree about that particular word.
I'll tell you what I think about it then. The fact that it was written in there, leave it in there. That's what was written. That's how it was at the time. Not offended by something that was written at a time when that was acceptable. That's what was acceptable. I don't agree with it now. Somebody used it in a current book now, I would be saying, why have you put that in there? That's very foolish. But if it's a piece of script that was written years and years ago, describing a time and a way of behaviour and a language, that's what it was about. You don't mess with Shakespeare.
Who do you think they're trying to protect? Because I disagree with you. I don't think it's about revenue. I don't think it's about sales.
I think it is. No, it is.
Well, I think
protecting the vulnerable working.
Well, I think maybe they're being persuaded by the woke mob to remove that word. So I don't think it's about revenue per se. But I wonder what the motivation is for doing this. Is it just to expunge that word from history moving forward?
It's not just that, there's loads of it.
That example that you read out about in the...
It's stuff like that.
It's a brilliant description of men watching a very erotic striptease and what is happening to them. And Bond himself, feeling the stirrings in the loins and all that. And they just completely...
They ruined it.
Ruined it. You just think, well, that was pretty boring. They have completely ruined it. It's crazy.
Like they've replaced a lot of the ethnic words as well. So, a black person, they're calling a black person, or they've dropped the reference to what kind of ethnicity that person was altogether, which I think... Leave it in. I mean, it's set in the scene.
If Odd Job was Korean, Odd Job was Korean.
Some people might find that an offensive reference to that, and if you do, we apologise for that. But that's why they're doing it, because of the current day. But that's an older book.
But also, you could write a book now about a period story. And Nana, you said if you write a book now and use that type of language, I'm paraphrasing, but you say it's foolish or whatever.
Do that, no.
I think you can do. You should be able to do it. If you want to write a book with words that are unacceptable today, set in a period when it was acceptable, I think you should still be able to do that.
I'm just saying, yes, you can do it, but I think it's foolish. If you're going to do the reason why is because...
No, you're right, you won't get
That's what I'm saying.
These sensitivity readers.
Yeah, you're right, you won't get
Can I just say a quick hello, because I think he might be watching.
Oh, OK.
Well, because a great, great friend of mine, I hope you're watching, Henry, is Henry Blofeld, who is the villain Blofeld's son.
No.
His father was at Eton with Fleming, and he chose his big two villains, Blofeld and, oh dear, what's the other? Scaramanga. Scaramanga.
I love that character.
He was... Bunny Scaramanga is a friend of mine, too.
Is he?
Yes, it's her husband. She is in her 90s now. It's her husband who was at school. So I know both the Bond villains, Blofeld and Scaramanga, and I got them together once at a lunch at Pinewood Studios. How great was that?
I love Scaramanga.
Anyway, hello, Henry.
Hello, Henry. Scaramanga, which was that? Was that Dr. No, or was that Live and Let Die?
Oh, I can't remember. I'm not a Bond expert.
Who's your favourite James Bond, if you could pick one, Christine?
Oh, my goodness. I'm not an expert. Sean Connery, probably.
Yeah.
Do you think?
But when I'm not near the Bond I love the Bond I'm near. The one I didn't think was, I don't know, Roger Moore.
I loved Roger Moore.
I love Roger Moore, but then I love Roger Moore anyway.
Roger Moore.
He was thought to be a bit too sort of,
I love that about him. He was so smooth, and I really like that. But I think if you're going to talk about a current one, my favourite one's probably Daniel Craig.
Yeah. What they mustn't do is rewrite it to the extent of having a female Bond. Bond is a man.
I can.
Well, they might do a transgender
I can be persuaded.
In between.
I could be persuaded to walk out of a sea towards the beach in tiny little
white
blue
bikini.
And well, not that Daniel Craig
Ursula,
wore. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about Daniel Craig.
On top with it.
in the budgie smuggler.
You can see him with the budgie.
Sean Connery was my favourite, since you ask.
You're getting us
Sean Connery.
You're getting us too excited now.
Yeah. So what was your
Sean Connery. Yeah. Roger Moore, close second. I tell you what I liked about him. I love their ability just to be womanizers. I really did. And it was all consensual. You know, as long as things are consensual, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yeah. And I quite like that. But then there were some wicked, evil women villains as well.
They were
very strong.
Yeah.
Grace Jones. Remember Grace Jones?
That's who you look like. One of the. Was it Bambi? It was Bambi, the
Grace
tall
Jones,
black woman, the incredibly beautiful, glamorous woman who walked around in a swimsuit, going around strangling people.
Oh, Grace Jones.
It was Bambi.
Fantastic. I mean, you know, so
that's a real compliment, Nana.
It is a compliment.
Actually, on her Island Life album cover, I'm going to replicate that one day. I don't know whether you've seen it or not. She's got a microphone and she's not quite naked, but she's doing this pose. I'm going to try and replicate
Bambi.
that one day.
I'll watch out for it on Twitter tomorrow.
A lot of weight to lose.
No, you haven't.
You've got even more, Danny. You'll never do it. But you can do the Sean Connery.
I don't want to be Bambi.
Well, you wanted to be, what's his name, in his Budgie Smugglers.
Yeah.
Daniel Craig.
I'll do Ursula Andress in the white bikini.
Yeah.
A pile of weight to lose before then.
No, you'd be fabulous.
Photoshopped. Photoshopped.
What was your favourite Bond? Let us know. GBViews at gbnews.uk. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one. Well, stay tuned. Ian Fleming Publications said that we at Ian Fleming Publications reviewed the text of the original Bond books and decided that our best course of action was to follow Ian's lead. We have made changes to Live and Let Die that he himself authorised. Following Ian's approach, we looked at the instances of several racial terms across the books and removed a number of individual words or else swapped them for terms that are more accepted today, but in keeping with the period in which the books were written. We encourage people to read the books for themselves when the new paperbacks are published in April. Good advert, innit? I told you.
Yeah.
Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak preparing to sell off our sovereignty? Now, it comes as Prime Minister is set to scrap Boris Johnson's Northern Ireland Protocol Bill as part of his new deal with Brussels. Stay with me. We'll be back in a moment.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead for much of the week, it's going to be dry and settled. There will be a few showers at times, though, pushing in from the North Sea. And the reason for this is high pressure is in charge. It remains over the UK right through the week ahead, keeping it largely dry, though with a northeasterly breeze, a few showers will feed in, particularly across eastern areas. Through the rest of Sunday, we'll see clearing skies across much of central southern England and Wales, allowing a patchy frost to form. Northern England into Northern Ireland, southern Scotland. We'll see a bit more cloud here as we move into the early hours, the risk of a few showers. Scotland also seeing those clear skies. Temperatures falling to -7, -8 across the glens of Scotland. Under the cloud, 3 or 4 degrees, and then a patchy frost also under the clear skies in the southwest. Cloud across eastern areas will push its way south and westwards quite quickly Monday morning, turning the skies quite grey, the risk of 1 or 2 light showers. Best of the sunshine holding on across northwestern parts of Scotland. There will be a few glimmers of bright or sunny spells elsewhere, but rather cloudy afternoon to come. Temperatures similar, 7 to 9 Celsius, so generally around average, perhaps if we get any sunshine in the southeast, creeping towards 10. Into the evening and overnight, Monday into Tuesday morning, we'll see variable amounts of cloud, probably more cloud compared to recent nights across England and Wales, meaning less risk of a widespread frost here. Perhaps under any clear spells, a patchy frost forming, staying quite cloudy for Northern Ireland. Clearer skies across Scotland, where temperatures once again falling below freezing. Towns and cities holding up a little bit higher compared to recent nights for the vast majority of us. So it does mean Tuesday will be a cloudier start to the day. Risk of showers moving in from the North Sea, perhaps a more organised band of rain and some hill snow moving into southeast England. One area to watch over the next few days, but largely staying dry. Temperatures generally around average. See you again soon.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 24 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. You can also download the shows live. You can watch them on YouTube, or why not download our GB News app where you can watch the shows live. Right, I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, I was discussing Ian Fleming's books being edited. Let's have a look at what you've been saying. Oscar says 007 is a staple of British culture. Censoring those books is denying our history. Judith says, same thing as Dahl books. I believe it's a money-making PR stunt. They can now sell the original set of the Bond books as well as the new doctored set of books. Yeah. And Patricia says, love your banter, Nana, with Danny and Christine. It's great, isn't it? Completely agree when it comes to Mr. Bond. Right, well, keep your thoughts coming because now it's time for our great British debate this hour. I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak preparing to sell off our sovereignty? Now, the Prime Minister is on the brink of scrapping the Northern Ireland Protocol bill as part of a new deal with Brussels. Now, Rishi Sunak recently held a conference call for cabinet ministers and is expected to make a statement to the House of Commons tomorrow. Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar also said that the deal between Great Britain and Northern Ireland was inching towards a conclusion. Now, the Northern Ireland Protocol bill, which was introduced by Boris Johnson, gives the government the power to unilaterally ditch parts of the protocol. But what does it actually entail? Well, it was introduced in Parliament in June last year, aiming to not only fix parts of the protocol, but also to restore stability and protect the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. It basically allows Whitehall to address the practical problems the protocol has created in Northern Ireland in 4 key areas. The first is difficult customs processes. The next area is inflexible regulation. It also addresses tax and spend, and it addresses democratic governance issues. If you're confused by all of that, don't be, because under the protocol, Northern Ireland remains part of the EU single market to avoid a border on the Northern Ireland or the island of Ireland. Right, a new deal with Brussels could reaffirm the UK's obligation to comply with international rulings. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak preparing to sell off our sovereignty? Well, joining me now is political commentator Reem Ibrahim, fellow for the Centre of Brexit Policy, Catherine McBride, and with me in the studio is former editor of the Labour List, Peter Edwards. Peter, I'm going to start with you, seeing as you're in the studio. So, Peter, what do you think about this? Rishi Sunak seems to be edging closer to potentially ditching the protocol bill. Is he wise to do that?
Well, it looks like that's going to happen. It's been in the works for a couple of weeks. There's been very little publicity about it, but then a flurry of briefings over the last 48 hours. It seems to be a mixture of good and bad. So a green lane for goods going from Great Britain into Northern Ireland, and power for Northern Irish courts to deal with disputes in the first instance rather than going to Europe. So one sense is that will keep a lot of people happy. But then you have Boris Johnson on the sidelines criticising the deal before it's even been announced, first off the record and then publicly, and frankly putting his own political career and his Downing Street hopes before that of Northern Ireland. And then this very strange plan that was put forward, then dropped, to involve the King in a press conference or an afternoon tea with the head of the EU Commission. And Downing Street seems to have suddenly dropped that for the very obvious reason that it's politicising the King.
What do you think, Rain, listening to that? What's your view?
Well, look, I think that it's very clear that the Northern Ireland Protocol was not working, and these larger companies can absorb these compliance costs. They have to sort of put forward a ream of customs paperwork in order for them to be able to transport those goods over the border. So clearly, the Northern Ireland Protocol isn't working. Clearly, something has had to change. However, if we've still got a foreign court, the European Court of Justice, with jurisdiction over Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom and Great Britain, that is unacceptable. And I think that most people understand that actually we voted to leave the European Union in order to gain greater sovereignty. So if we have a European court, a foreign court, that still has jurisdiction over Northern Ireland for those European laws, that's unacceptable. Clearly the Northern Ireland Protocol isn't working, but this sort of change has to happen.
Well, yeah, we do need to do something, but isn't the worry that we're actually going to end up losing that one part of it, which is the most strongest part of it that sort of keeps the EU in check? Catherine, what do you think?
Well, I think that the whole thing was instigated under a false premise. There just isn't that much food that goes into Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, from Northern Ireland. And right now it can go directly from Liverpool to Dublin without the same sort of checks that they're forcing onto food that's going into Northern Ireland. There was always a border. They have two different currencies, they have different VAT rates, they have different excise duties. And the Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland managed that border without checks for 25 years. The whole premise of the Northern Ireland Protocol was false. It was a way of tying the UK into the EU regulation. Besides the list you have made very comprehensively, but you missed out VAT. A lot of people may not be aware that there are goods in the UK that the government reduced VAT on, but Northern Ireland still has 5% VAT. And these are goods that are meant to be compulsory soon for people in housing. So in insulation, draft strips, solar panels, ground-sourced heating and air-sourced heating units. They all have zero VAT in GB, but 5% in Northern Ireland. And this is because Northern Ireland is basically being annexed by the EU. I mean, Go ahead.
Well, what you said seems perfectly sensible to me. Peter, what she's saying actually is that this is actually a false god, really. We don't really need this sort of thing anyway, because there's very little trade between the two areas that this would affect.
Well, I'd be wary of saying very little trade, for as long as there's trade between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, which we hope will be forever, then we need to ensure that's as easy as possible. And let's zoom out a minute from the legalities. Northern Ireland has been somewhere in the context of Great Britain, in the context of the United Kingdom, has been less affluent and has benefited from funds coming from Westminster, just like the Scottish Government receives funds under the Barnett formula. So given there's been a level of relative hardship in Northern Ireland over the last 30 years, the idea of risking any more of the economic links seems to me madness, because we should be doing everything we can to stimulate growth in Northern Ireland while preserving the peace. And we're clearly not quite there yet.
Well, are you comfortable, Peter, with the European Court overruling the court in Northern Ireland then?
Well, I mean, I didn't vote for Brexit in the first place,
but
I'm also a pragmatist. Yeah, we are where we are.
But are you comfortable with the notion that a European court could overrule a British court?
Well, that's what's been happening, and it's what the Conservative government are trying to extricate us from. But I mean, I've no idea if it's going to happen, but I'd imagine the ECJ will pull out eventually, because it will be intolerable for a Conservative Prime Minister to retain support of his backbenchers if there's still a role for the ECJ.
Well, it'll be an interesting juggling act for Rishi Sunak. Do you think that he's going to be able to actually manage to achieve that?
Well, I think that Sunak's been relatively weak on this issue. I mean, the ECJ has already, as Peter's pointed out, has already had jurisdiction over Northern Ireland, over European issues, because that's where their jurisdiction is. And so long as Northern Ireland is still in the single market, they still do retain that jurisdiction. I think that Sunak, I mean, I hope that he is a sort of true blue Brexiteer and that he will sort of sort the situation out. But he needs to be strong. And at the moment, what we're seeing, we're being told that a new deal is going to be negotiated very, very soon. We've been told that for the past week, so I'm not sure when that's actually going to happen. Hopefully by the end of this year, we'll see. But I think what's interesting about this is that if the ECJ do still have jurisdiction over Northern Ireland, I think that we will see this political unrest within the Conservative Party. But again, if this is a real huge test for Rishi Sunak, is he strong enough to stand up to the European Union?
Well, I'm going to give Catherine the final word on this. Catherine, do you think that Rishi Sunak will be able to actually keep that part of the legislation safe so that we can maintain our sovereignty?
Well, he has to. I mean, it's shocking, some of the rumours that are flying around at the moment that he's going to use Labour Party votes to try and push this through Parliament, even if his own MPs rebel. I think that's shocking. It's not democratic. I mean, then everyone will be asking how this guy became Prime Minister anyhow. He has to be whiter than white on this issue. He has to let people examine the detail of the agreement, whatever he's agreed. Do not try and push it through Parliament without people being able to look at it. If it is really as easy as they claim and just about red lanes and green lanes and all of the paperwork is done online, then this can happen on the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. If that's all it is, then there is no need for it to happen in the Irish Sea. It can happen as the trucks are driving down the highway. So I really think he's going to have to explain this carefully if he wants to remain leader of the party. And I think if he tries to ram it through with Labour votes, he's a goner. They will just get rid of him. In the same way that he got rid of Boris. I mean, let's be frank.
Thank you so much, Catherine. We're running out of time. Catherine McBride, thank you so much for your thoughts. She's a fellow for the Centre for Brexit Policy. Also, Reem Ibrahim, thank you very much, political commentator. And also Peter Edwards, former editor of the Labour List. Thank you so much. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak preparing to sell off our sovereignty? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Then stay tuned at 5 o'clock. It's this week's Outside. Now, my mystery celebrity guest has had a very interesting career. She started out in MI6, or is it M16? No, it's MI6, isn't it? Before becoming a TV star, she was the presenter of a hit television series that went stateside. We need another clue. Can anyone guess who that might be? I'll give you another clue after your latest news headlines.
4:34, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. GB News understands that Downing Street is planning an announcement as early as this evening on a new deal with the European Union over the Northern Ireland Protocol. It comes after the Prime Minister said he's hopeful of achieving a positive outcome by the end of this weekend. Describing it as unfinished business, he said it's vital to ensure a return to power sharing in the province. The DUP has refused to form an executive at Stormont in protest over the current Brexit deal. MP Sammy Wilson says the party hasn't seen any proposal yet.
What we do know is that there doesn't appear to have been any deal on the central issue which affects Northern Ireland, and that is the imposition of EU law. All of the problems that we face with not able to get goods from GB, checks on goods coming from GB and disruption to our economy stems from the fact that we're under a different set of laws than the rest of the United Kingdom, and therefore checks are required to make sure we're complying not with British law but with Brussels law.
58 people have died after a ship got into difficulties off Italy's south coast. 27 bodies were found on a beach in the southern region of Calabria, and more have been found in the water. It's reported that the boat left from Turkey and was carrying migrants from Somalia, Pakistan and Afghanistan when it crashed against rocks during rough seas. There are 81 survivors, with 22 in hospital. Social housing managers will be required to study for qualifications to drive up standards following the death of a 2-year-old boy. Awab Ishak died in December 2020 from a respiratory condition caused by mould at his home in Rochdale. Housing Secretary Michael Gove announced the plan after acknowledging that social housing residents are being inexcusably let down. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Nana will be back in just a moment.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Welcome back. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's fast approaching 40 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Don't forget as well, you can watch us live on YouTube. But it's now time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak preparing to sell off our sovereignty? Right, well, the Prime Minister is on the brink of scrapping the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill as part of a new deal with Brussels. And the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, which was introduced by Boris Johnson, gives the government the power to unilaterally ditch parts of the protocol. But what does it actually entail? Well, it was introduced in Parliament in June last year, aiming to not only fix parts of the protocol, but also to restore stability and protect the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. So it allows Whitehall, to address the practical problems that the protocol has created in Northern Ireland in 4 key areas. One of those areas is difficult customs processes, so it sort of addresses those things. Also the inflexible regulations, taxing and spending, the discrepancies there, and also democratic governance issues. So, for example, that would involve the European Court of Justice, so we could overrule them. Now, under the protocol, Northern Ireland remains part of the EU's single market to avoid a border on the island of Ireland. A new deal with Brussels could reaffirm the UK's obligation to comply with international rulings. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak preparing to sell off our sovereignty? Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Christine, I'm going to start with you. What's your thought on this?
Well, I don't know, and that's the problem. Nobody knows. He hasn't taken anybody into his confidence. It sounds from the reports that the announcement of the deal is imminent, could even be tomorrow. He hasn't thought to discuss it with the DUP. He hasn't thought to discuss it with any of the leading ERG MPs. So nobody knows, which is creating...
Well, he might have. Do we know that he definitely hasn't spoken to these people?
I sense that the DUP would have... Well, apparently there was a meeting between can't remember which one it was, but one of the senior DUPs in Belfast when Rishi was over there the other day. But they don't seem to be aware of exactly what's in there. It may be... I think that the EU... This is my take on it. Two things. First of all, I think the EU is finding it easier to deal with Rishi Sunak than they did to deal with Boris, because he doesn't come with Boris's sort of blustery hinterland. So I think maybe they will be a little more amenable. I may just be wishful thinking on that.
But also he's more of a sort of globalist type character.
Well, precisely.
He's more into
their thinking. But the other thing which I sense is that because he's a globalist, I don't think he fully... I mean, he's only been in Parliament a few years. Does he fully understand the emotional attachment that the DUP and people who think like them have to the status of Northern Ireland? I don't know that he fully appreciates why the DUP are so determined to dig their heels on this and to get what they want. I don't know. Time will tell.
I think maybe you're underestimating him. He's not stupid. He's highly intelligent.
Yes.
And he would have lived through the latter parts of the Troubles. You know, how old is he? He's 42, 43. So when he was 17, 18, the Good Friday Agreement kicked in. So I think he knows about how toxic and potentially violent.
I don't think he
What,
gets
in his Prada shoes? Listen, I'm sorry.
Wearing Prada shoes doesn't mean you don't have a grasp on history.
Well, I don't think that's really what that intimates. By me saying that is his disconnection with the actual on-the-ground people, the real world. That's just an example. Like, if I could give it a proper example, then, of where he didn't even know how to use the petrol pump, or where he had a reasonably priced car, which he seemed to be showing that was his car, to try and sort of let us know that he was at one with us.
But those are two examples.
Well, I could give you more.
Yeah, but no matter how many examples you give me about how wealthy and detached he is from the everyday man, that doesn't mean he doesn't understand about the history of Northern Ireland.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that...
Well, Christine said that he didn't have a grasp on it.
He doesn't understand them.
I did not...
But how do you know that?
I did not say that because he was wealthy he didn't understand.
No, you didn't.
I never mentioned
you said that.
No, I didn't.
No, you said because...
Look back at the tape.
I said... No, I don't need to. I know what I said. I said because of his Prada shoes, and that reference to Prada shoes was the intimation... Oh. Excuse me.
It's not true.
It was intimating. Yes, it is.
I wasn't intimating about his wealth.
I'm talking about me.
Yeah, but you put words in my mouth.
Can you let me finish?
Well, if you don't put words in my mouth...
Let me finish. I'm talking about what I said. I said I was intimating by using the Prada shoes reference that he's disconnected from the people and the real world. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about me. When I gave examples of where he shows his lack of connection with what people actually on the ground are going through, I gave an example of the fact that he was unsure how to use a petrol pump and that he didn't really know he had a reasonably big priced car that wasn't his, where he's trying to show that he's connected with the people. That's the point I'm making.
OK, but having Prada shoes, which were your words, doesn't mean that he doesn't have a connection with history. You can say all you want,
because you're not understanding what I'm...
I am, but you're prejudging the case because he's minted.
No.
Yes, you are.
That's not what I said.
Why did you bring Prada shoes into it then?
Because it shows, alongside the other things that I gave you an example of, shows his disconnection with reality.
Can we raise our eyes from the ground?
With the shoes.
Prada shoes, exactly. And I think it's because of his you know, he's a Goldman Sachs globalist, multinationalist.
Exactly.
And he has too much sympathy with the EU position. That's my view. And it's the EU that are creating all these problems. Let's just be honest. I mean, when EU citizens come to this country, they just come in through passport control, and that's fine. They're not held up in the way that we are when we go to EU countries. They are the ones who are creating all the hoo-ha about goods crossing the border. We are not. I mean, why don't we just face down the EU and say, look, we will have no border control whatsoever between the EU and the UK, the Great Britain and Northern Ireland. If you want to erect a wall and guard posts, you do that, but we're not going to. We should just basically tell them what Boris Johnson is alleged to have said about the Americans.
I think we should wait until...
It's a word I can't say on the...
What did he say about the Americans?
I'm not going to, don't worry.
OK, I think we should wait till tomorrow until we find out what is in the detail.
Well, that's how it started,
So we're prematurely sort of second-guessing or first-guessing what's going to happen. If you're right about the DUP, as from my view, what's sacrosanct is peace in Northern Ireland.
Of course, the Good
And that
Friday
is what
agreement.
is sacrosanct. I want to get the DUP back at Stormont. OK, for those listening on radio, if looks could kill, Nana would kill me.
Yes.
I want to get the DUP back...
I've got an ejector button. I don't think it's going to take your weight and push you up.
I'm rather frightened of getting in the middle.
I want to get the DUP back in Stormont, and I'm not a Brexit purist. Everyone I know thinks I voted for Brexit, but that is top secret.
You did vote for Brexit.
No, you didn't.
I'm not... there you go, this is the beauty of it.
I could tell that you were a Remainer, the way you defended Rishi Sunak and his Prada shoes.
Come on, listen. Stop.
Don't forget, he's a Brexiter as well.
I'll tell you one thing. If
I've just stopped myself in it as well.
Stop it, you two.
Listen, I do that.
I'm going to... If Rishi Sunak cannot get this through the House of Commons without the support of Labour, then he is sunk. I mean, that would be political suicide if he relies on the Labour vote to get this through. He's got to come up with something that will attract the support of the ERG. And Boris, of course, I always feel is hovering in the wings. Boris wants to take his place. I would hope that Boris would put the interests of Northern Ireland and the Union...
I don't think Boris needs to hover in the wings. He just needs to watch Rishi Sunak think, I think.
Just finally, because I know we've got to move on, I disagree. I think Rishi Sunak knows the Tories are toast to the next election. I think his legacy, he wants his legacy to be the final deal for Northern Ireland, personally. And I don't think he gives a damn about the ERG. I really don't.
But that fits my argument as well.
But you say if we rely on Labour, then he's toast. We're toast anyway.
Oh, well, indeed we're toast. He's certainly toast.
It's amazing when they have...
Well, I'm not a Tory,
It's amazing how they destroyed an 80-seat majority. It's just unbelievable. Well, this show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you really think about the topics we're discussing. I mean, honestly, seriously, you'd think the Conservative Party actually had an opposition. They've got themselves. Right, let's go to... where should we go? Durham. Let's go to Durham. Let's speak to our great British voice, Adam Wildsmith. Adam, it's getting a bit wild in here, crikey. Adam, what do you think of this? Come on. Is he going to sell up our sovereignty?
Well, I think every major player in this fight on the UK side is a Brexiteer, campaigned for Brexit, supported Brexit. So I think to accuse them of showing a disregard for British interests and British sovereignty is disingenuous at best. Of course, we haven't seen the Prime Minister's agreement, but it is expected that it will reduce trading checks across the Irish Sea with the two-lane system. Repatriated to Westminster will be powers on VAT, on tax, on social aid. So I don't think this is an agreement that most Conservative MPs won't back. I think some Tories will never back anything the Prime Minister brings back from Brussels, either because they care more about purity to the cause than they do about getting an agreement that actually works for the people of Northern Ireland, or because perhaps it's not in their political interest to back the agreement. But I think, bar some big development that we don't know about now, I think most Tory MPs will back the agreement when it comes back next week.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what the agreement is. Adam, thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. That's Adam Wildsmith. He's there in Durham. Wow. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Stay tuned. After the break, we've got Worldview. We'll be getting the latest news from across the globe, including Russia, Ukraine and the US. And then at 5, my mystery guest, well, she's been a regular feature on your TV screens, most recently heading to Naxos alongside the likes of Ingrid Tarrant and Lizzie Cundy for a programme called My Shirley Valentine, where they lived in a villa together, hoping to find love. Who do you think she is? She was also a spy at one time. Well, stay tuned, you'll find out, but first, a break.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. We are the People's Channel, and it's now time for World View. Now, it has now been over a year since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and there are reports that President Putin is planning a spring offensive. Meanwhile, many European countries and the US are providing tanks to Ukraine, which are expected to arrive in the coming weeks. However, President Zelensky is urging countries to send fighter jets to help them defeat Russian aggression. Let's go to the Ukrainian Member of Parliament, Kira Rudek, now and find out more. Kira, thank you so much for joining me. So I want to ask you, what is the feeling now over in Kyiv?
Hello, Nana. Thank you so much for having me. We are getting ready for the spring offensive. It seemed that it started a week ago, slowly pushing our forces in the east. However, we are getting ready from our side, and we hope that the Western weapons that were promised, that they would arrive in time. We have gone through the first anniversary of the full-scale invasion without the massive missile attacks, but we are still very concerned and prepared to what may happen next. We have heard Putin's recent speech to his people, and what is very concerning and what we have warned the world as well is that he is pulling off the nuclear deal, and basically this is another proof of that he can do things that and get out of the deals, and saying that he can do it with any peace deal, saying, well, we changed our minds. So we all have to keep it in mind. However, we know that the next couple of months would be critical for us because there would be massive fightings at the east.
Well, Kira, China has stepped in and made a few comments. Well, what are your thoughts on some of the things that China said? Because they didn't really back Russia, but they sort of seem to be playing almost a peacemaker type role. Is that how you guys interpreted what China are saying?
So there are China playing it both ways, same as they always do. So on one hand, they are sending the so-called peace plan, which is like not concrete, just saying like everything should be good and bad things should not happen, but doesn't have any particular say that Russia need to pull off their forces. And on the other hand, they are considering sending weapons to Russia, and we know that these negotiations are happening. So what we need to remember is that Russia and China are looking closely at the actions of our Western allies, and they are looking at any signs of weakness because they would use it as an opportunity. Like you see, China was very calm for a year, looking who may who may be winning the war and what would be the chances for them to get the best opportunities there. And this is why, again, we cannot actually make an influence on China's decisions. But what we can do is make sure that we are strong and that our unity remains concrete and remains intact. And this is what is the most important right now.
Well, listen, Kira, thank you so much for talking to us. That's Kira Rudek. She's a Ukrainian MP. Well, joining me now to talk about Russia is political commentator and Russian expert Danny Armstrong. Danny, we've got about a minute with you, so you need to be brief here. You're good at being brief on this. So how has the war actually affected the Russian people?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I'll always be brief for you, Nana, as what you say goes. Well, how it's being viewed in Russia is, well, two ways, really. This war is being viewed as something of a war, on the culture war, as it were. Vladimir Putin said in his address a few days ago, just on the anniversary of the first year since the invasion, Vladimir Putin said that these Western ideals, these attacks on the institution of the family, these attacks on Russian orthodoxy, Russian values, Russian culture and history cannot reach their borders. It is being seen very much as NATO dismantling Russia, dismantling the former Soviet Union, as it were, and some of those attacks that Western ideology Russia can't afford for it to come onto their borders, and that is directly linked to some of the aid that has been afforded to Ukraine. If those Western powers, of course, it is paramount to ready Ukraine for that spring offensive, as it is already happening. But if it does continue to go on, then it will validate that pretext that is being sold by the Kremlin to the Russian people, that they are at war with the West and NATO and the US, and those ideals will take over Russian culture and Russian history. And that is the truth of the matter.
Wow. Well, Danny, thank you very much for joining me. That's Danny Armstrong, our Russian expert. Right, travelling over to America now, and we're going to speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge. Very pleased that Danny understood that he shouldn't mess around. Right, Paul, nice to see you. Are you over COVID now?
I'm over COVID, yeah. I'm looking beautiful, I think, according to my little camera here. Yeah, thank you very much for asking. Yes, I'm well.
Good. That's good, that's good. Right, let's start with Trump then. He's taken a visit, hasn't he, to the East Palestine region in Ohio.
Yes, he alone is the only politician, anybody that's held any presidential kind of office, to visit East Palestine in Ohio. February the 3rd, they had a train carrying very toxic chemicals going through East Palestine, and 50 cars derailed. And this released noxious substances into the ground, the water and the air. And people were evacuated, etc. And now Trump still waited 2 weeks before he visited, because nobody from the federal government was visiting, no prominent people from the federal government. So Trump visited on the 22nd of February. It wasn't until then that Pete Buttigieg, who's supposed to be the transport secretary, actually bothered attending. Biden has confirmed he still has no plans to visit. Now, bearing in mind, this is a disaster area, but Biden was too busy in Kyiv to visit a disaster area in the United States. Mind you, ironically, he was traveling by train there as well. So Trump is getting it in the neck from mainstream media over here and sort of liberal voices, like he's some sort of opportunist. He waited and waited and waited. It was 3 weeks, 3 weeks before he attended. And until he went, nobody from the administration actually visited. But Trump has bought water, he's brought food, still getting mocked and criticized for it. Yeah, but it's nothing to do with the fact that East Palestine has a 40% Trump majority in the 2020 election.
Who's this Buttigieg guy? What a name. Is that his name? Did you say Keith or Pete Buttigieg?
Yes, that's his name, Pete Buttigieg. You have to say Buttigieg. They release, when they do press releases, they do it phonetically. Pete Buttigieg, he's the transport secretary. Right. He was actually one of the presidential candidates, if you remember. He sort of went out early in the Democratic race.
And very briefly, the snowstorms in California.
Yes, no, exactly. Well, we're literally having blizzard warnings for the first time since 1989. We're having blizzard warnings, and normally when you get blizzards of white powder in Los Angeles, it's usually illegal substances. But this time, it's actually snow and hailstones, and we're literally the Los Angeles are experiencing something that they're not used to. It's called weather. And my house is made of balsa wood and holes, basically. So we are living in pretty much a sponge.
Well, listen, thank you so much, Paul Dudridge. Always good to talk to you. That's Paul Dudridge, host of the Politics People podcast. Stay tuned. This is GB News. Loads more to come in the next hour. It is 5 o'clock. Welcome on board. If you've just joined me, where have you been? I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Now, I'll be joined in a moment by a very special mystery guest. Now, she is famed for her cleaning skills. She also has appeared on Dancing on Ice. She was her first job, I think she was a spy. Who is she? Coming up as well for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, would you take your child to a drag queen story hour? Stay tuned. That's after your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. It's rapidly approaching 1 minute after 5. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. And some breaking news in the last few minutes. It's been confirmed that the President of the European Commission will visit the UK tomorrow to continue talks with the Prime Minister over the Northern Ireland Protocol. In a statement released by Number 10, it said Rishi Sunak and Ursula von der Leyen will continue attempts to find practical solutions to challenges resulting from the post-Brexit trading arrangements. Comes after the Prime Minister said he's hopeful of achieving a positive outcome by the end of this weekend. The DUP has refused to form an executive at Stormont in protest over the current Brexit deal. MP Sammy Wilson says the party hasn't seen any proposal yet.
What we do know is that there doesn't appear to have been any deal on the central issue which affects Northern Ireland, and that is the imposition of EU law. All of the problems that we face with not able to get goods from GB, checks on goods coming from GB and disruption to our economy stems from the fact that we're under a different set of laws than the rest of the United Kingdom, and therefore checks are required to make sure we're complying not with British law but with Brussels law.
Well, former Trade Secretary Liam Fox says he will support the new post-Brexit deal if it's an improvement, and he expects fellow Tory MPs and the DUP to do the same.
I think the DUP will also be willing to see restrictions diminished, again, in the hope that over time some of them might disappear. I think the hope that the European Union would give up entirely on European law applying to some elements in Northern Ireland is unlikely, given what the British government conceded in the protocol. But we can make progress on that, and I think that both sides will want to see the Northern Ireland Assembly up and running, because that's the best guarantee to political stability and a reduction in violence.
In other news, at least 58 people, including children, have died after a ship got into difficulties off of Italy's south coast. Now it's reported that the boat left from Turkey and was carrying migrants from Somalia, Pakistan and Afghanistan. 27 bodies have been found on a beach in the southern region of Calabria, and more were found in the water after the boat crashed against rocks during rough seas. 81 people have survived. 22 of them are currently in hospital. Police in Northern Ireland have arrested a sixth person in connection with the attempted murder of an off-duty officer in Omagh. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was at a sports centre with his son on Wednesday when he was shot. He remains critically ill in hospital. Social housing managers will be required to study for qualifications to drive up standards following the death of a 2-year-old boy. Awab Ishak died in December 2020 from a respiratory condition caused by mould at his home in Rochdale. Housing Secretary Michael Gove announced the response after acknowledging that social housing residents are being inexcusably let down. Housing expert Richard Blanco says the move should protect vulnerable tenants, but there's more still to be done.
One of my concerns is that, I want this to trickle down to frontline housing officers, because they're often the ones that are going out and doing the visits. And indeed, I'd like to see more visits, because what we've found since COVID is that a lot of the work has been done remotely, and housing officers have not been going out enough to actually meet tenants and see with their own eyes what's going on.
And a popular beach in Norfolk could be closed for decades, according to locals, after cliff erosion made the area unsafe. Now, the beach at Hemsby near Great Yarmouth has lost more than 10 feet of land in just 2 days. The local lifeboat crew have had to close the shore over safety concerns. Local businesses are warning that they'll be significantly impacted, as the beach is their main source of income during the summer. Now, they're calling on the government to step in and help. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Nana.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Joining me today, it's author and broadcaster Christian Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Still to come each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career, and take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And today, I have a very, very special guest from MI6 to Queen of Clean. Our guest has never shied away from hard work. She found herself in the middle of a feud with her co-presenter on How Clean Is Your House. She's also taken part in an array of reality TV shows, including Dancing on Ice. My mystery guest will be live in just a moment. Can you work out who she is? And for the Great British Debate This Hour, I'm asking, would you take your child to a drag queen story hour? Now, a protest took place outside the Honour pub in Lewisham yesterday after it announced that it was organising several drag storytelling events which would expose children to drag performers. Now, concerns were raised over the potential adult content that children would be seeing at this. So what do you think? Would you do that? Would you send your child to one of those? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. And now it's time for this week's Outside. Now, my very special guest is a cleaning queen. She was one half of the duo that presented the hit TV show, How Clean Is Your House? Have you got it yet? Of course you have. But has now fallen out with her co-presenter, claiming tensions were high in the final 2 seasons of the show. Now, she's appeared on many other programmes, including Dancing on Ice, Celebrity MasterChef and Come Dine With Me. Most recently, she escaped to the Greek islands of Naxos, they're lovely down there, where she and several other celebrities, including Lizzie Cundy and Ingrid Tarrant, lived under the same roof on our Shirley Valentine summer. Here they rediscovered themselves whilst looking for love. Now, before she shot to fame, our guest worked for MI6, hoping to become the real-life Miss Moneypenny. Has anyone guessed? Of course you have. I'm joined today in the studio by none other than Aggie McKenzie. Aggie.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
I've lived a long time, Nana.
Well, no, what you've done is you've lived a full time, because some people live a long time and do nothing. You've done loads.
Yes, that's right. I'm always up for a new adventure, always.
That's great, isn't it? That's wonderful. So talk to me about you then. So where were you born? I mean, you're Scottish, I'm presuming.
Yeah, the north of Scotland in Aviemore, and I went to college in Aberdeen. I did a bilingual secretarial course, and from then I came to London to work in I thought it was the Foreign Office, but I was told on my first day, actually, this isn't. This is MI6. Secret Intelligence Service.
Oh, my God.
I thought, oh, that sounds so exciting. And actually, to begin with, it wasn't that exciting.
Really?
No, it was just kind of like typing out invoices and stuff like that. But then it got a little bit too exciting, and I'm not really allowed to talk about that. So, and I thought it's time for me to leave.
Really?
Yes.
I can't say anything, otherwise they're out there, even though it was that long ago.
I've had letters from the organisation saying, could you stop talking about this now?
Really?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
so we won't say any more.
I don't want to get arrested.
No, but you haven't said anything apart from the fact they sent you a letter telling you not to talk about it. Well,
yes.
So from MI6, how did you suddenly find yourself in the spotlight? Because that seems like such a move. From...
Yes, that's right. So I ended up working in women's magazines, and I went from one to the other, and then finally at Good Housekeeping magazine, I ran the institute, the consumer department and the cookery department, and from there I was asked to do a screen test for this weird new cleaning show. So I did. Kim and I did a screen test together. It was sparks from day one.
Really?
Yes. But I think, anyway, so the screen test, big tick, and then, within a few weeks we were out filming. But I think, we're chalk and cheese, so different from each other. But I think that was one of the reasons why it worked. Because of the friction there was between us, it created this energy, and so we knew how to be in front of the camera. Most of it was ad-lib. We had an idea of the storyline, but we just kind of made it up as we went along, really.
So when you said there were sparks from day one, in what way?
Well... OK, Kim's not the most straightforward person. I'm somebody who just likes to get on, and Kim had a very difficult beginning, a difficult childhood, and I think in her home growing up there was lots of conflict, many rows. She spent a lot of her childhood in a children's home, and I think for her it's kind of normal to have conflict, and I think that if things are calm and easy, I think she found that quite difficult. So that's where that came from.
That's interesting, because I know a lot of people who are actually like that, and probably me included. But there are some things where you're comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And, you know, I'm definitely somebody who's probably more comfortable being uncomfortable. If things are too easy, and sort of like to get bored and like...
No, not like...
Up in there.
That's not me. I like easy peasy
You like easy
lemon.
peasy?
Yeah.
So what was it like then with that relationship that you described, doing How Clean Is Your House, and also that you ad-libbed most of it? Most people wouldn't realise.
No, lots of highs, lots of few lows. I mean, we made... I think there was like 6 series in this country, then we did a couple in the States. We worked in New York and LA, and then we did the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Really? What's she like? You met her?
Yes, we were on the sofa next. I mean, she was
my God.
very kind of warm. I mean, it's funny actually, because in the States, everyone was saying, oh, you're going on the Oprah Winfrey Show?
Yeah.
She's like, you know, the goddess of everything there. And we're like, yeah. And, yeah, no, it was nice. We were told, like, what to say and what not to say, very carefully managed. Yes, so we did behave ourselves.
What were you not to say?
Do you know what? Such a long time ago, I can't really remember, but it was very, very closely managed and orchestrated. Yeah, I think we weren't allowed to plug our books too much and talk about this or that, and it's very much kind of on train tracks, yeah.
Wow, yeah. I'd love to meet Oprah. Well, I did want to meet Oprah until that disastrous interview with Meghan Markle. And I sort of lost interest there. I thought she didn't really challenge them. And I thought she was better than that. But I thought she was better than that. I was very disappointed. So How Clean Is Your House sort of ended. How did that end? Why did it end?
I think it sort of came to a natural end. You know, we'd done many years. Also, our relationship, it was kind of just becoming a bit difficult. A bit too difficult, actually. I think we both needed, you know, a change as well.
Well, you did it for a while, and it became really... I mean, it was very successful.
Yeah, we did it for six years, and that's a long time.
What was the biggest tip that you learned from there in terms of cleaning a house? Get somebody else to do it. That's my one.
Totally. No, that was the best thing, actually, other people doing it. Well, how amazing vinegar is. Just, you don't need to buy loads of products, loads of chemicals. You don't need to spend loads of money. And for me, it was just, you know, from Good Housekeeping, I knew all those amazing things that vinegar could do. And so, actually, in the last few years, I co-wrote a book about vinegar with my an ex-colleague at Good Housekeeping. She did the recipes using vinegar, and I did all the cleaning tips using vinegar. And in fact, this Thursday, the book's coming out in paperback.
Oh.
Yes, The Miracle of Vinegar.
The Miracle of Vinegar.
And it's just full of just great tips and lovely recipes, and I can highly recommend it.
OK. I thought vinegar was quite corrosive. So that if you were using it, if you're taking too much of it, it's not good for the bones.
Well, I mean, actually, every morning I have apple cider vinegar. I've been taking it for years. I have arthritis and have got no pain with it whatsoever. And I think it's brilliant for your digestive system, good for hair, skin. I think it's fantastic.
Well, obviously, are there any actual medical things that suggest that it's good, or is it just that you've taken it?
There's quite a lot of evidence. There's quite a lot of evidence. And do you know that thing of, well, I'm frightened not to take it in case the pain starts, in case my hair starts falling out or my skin starts. You know what I mean? I think it's good.
Interesting. Apple cider vinegar. Well, that's a tip, but obviously there's no doctors to confirm that. But this is your own,
my experience.
your experience and yours alone. So from all of that, How Clean Is Your House? You've written this book. Talk to me about some of the other stuff that you've done. I mean, you've done lots of reality TV shows. You did one with our lovely friend Lizzie Cundy.
Yeah, she's hilarious.
She's funny. She's great.
What I love, and also I loved Ingrid Tarrant as well. Nice. We got on so well. It was really a special time, and I think the producers were, you know what telly's like. They were maybe looking for a little bit of conflict between people, and actually that didn't happen at all. We had such a lovely time. I mean, who's not going to like being in the sunshine in this gorgeous house for a month and getting paid for it?
And the show was called?
My Shirley Valentine Summer.
Right.
So the idea was that we were all single women looking for love. And actually, the guys that they got for us, they weren't that they weren't that much cop. And in fact, they had to look in neighbouring islands, like they were pulling them in from Mykonos and Santorini. And,
oh, really?
Yeah. And I remember a couple of times, what's her name? Well, I'm so sorry, I can't remember who it was. Actually, Ingrid went out with one guy, and she came back and she was, no, didn't fancy him. But I think maybe, Aggie, you might. So, OK, I'll have a go, but I didn't fancy him either.
Were these guys up for it then? They were like...
Yeah, they kind of were, but I think we were all kind of, I don't know, in a way, too good for these guys.
Really? That's often the way.
I'm big-headed as that, but you know what I mean.
That's often the way, isn't
you know
it?
what I mean.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There's a way, although there's some... You've got to look around, but there are some good ones somewhere.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
So were you married at all? Have you got children?
I was married, I'm divorced, but get on very well with my ex-husband. I've got 2 grown-up boys. They're 32 and 28. I'm going to be a granny in the summer. I'm so excited. And both my sons are chefs, and they're just amazing. Yeah, no, they're great. And I actually feel quite nervous cooking in front of them now.
Really?
Yeah, they're very good, yeah.
So you've written this book and everything, and it's all about vinegar. The top tip from vinegar, I'm going to try this apple cider vinegar you've talked about as well. I'm going to try it myself, see if it has any effect.
Yes.
Because I also have arthritis.
No, absolutely. Just take a couple of teaspoons every morning, and I just think it's...
that's your... Obviously, that is your view.
That's my...
But I know that you're also into yoga.
Yes, that's right. About, let's see, I started... When I got to 50, I thought, I better start moving my body and, you know, doing some exercise. So I thought, what do old people do? Yoga. So I started doing it, and, you know, at the beginning it was like, oh, God, when's this lesson going to end? I'm bored. And then I got to like it, and then I got to like it so much, I thought, I want to train to be a teacher. And it was really hard work. It was like 18 months and a lot of writing, dissertation, a lot of anatomy, physiology. But qualified, and I've been teaching for about 6 years now. I actually teach every day, and it's the best thing ever. I'm so pleased to have this in my life. I'm fitter, more flexible, stronger than I've ever been. And most of the people I teach, they're sort of my age and maybe, around my age. And also I teach young people as well. People say to me, what sort of yoga do you do? And I go, well, it's called mongrel yoga. You know that thing dogs mixing? It's all a bit of a mixture. So I look to see who's in front of me, and if they're young, then they'll want something a bit more dynamic. But maybe my age or a little bit old. Actually, one of my students, she's 82, and she's just amazing. And I love teaching her and, you know, take it a bit more slowly and... But it's great. It's so nice.
I do yoga all the time, actually. I do heat yoga.
Wonderful.
Do it in the heat. Heat yoga is very good.
Yes.
It's very difficult, but it's good.
Do you do headstands?
I do all of them. I do press handstands, down-facing dog. I do the crow with one leg in the air.
I can't. I
can't do the one-legged crow.
Do crow.
You'll get there.
Oh, I know, but shoulders.
No, it's not in the shoulders. It's in the wrists.
And also confidence as well. You need confidence, don't you?
Yeah. Well, listen. If people want to, do you do any training online? Can people do your classes?
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. I have a little group, and anyone's welcome, and I do one-to-ones.
Where do they find us?
Well, Aggie at AggieMcKenzie.com.
Wonderful.
Aggie at AggieMcKenzie.com.
And the book? That's out
And
now.
this is, it's out in paperback on Thursday. Very quickly, the other thing I do, it started as a hobby and it's become an obsession.
Oh, yeah.
It's cyanotype printing.
What is that?
It's actually using the sun and just objects. And it's like magic.
I'll see if I can show you one of them.
It's absolute. That's upside down.
Is that
Sorry, Nana.
upside down?
And I just kind of find these little botanical objects, and it's a really kind of interesting process called cyanotype. And it's, as I say, it started as a hobby, and now it's an addiction, and I love it.
Well, listen, you can send me some of those, and that'd be great. That'd be lovely.
You have them.
Oh, thank you, Aggie. Yeah. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
And
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Lovely to talk to you. That is the wonderful Aggie McKenzie. Wow. Well, of course, that was outside. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, would you take your child to a drag queen story hour? Now, a protest took place outside the Honour pub in Lewisham yesterday after it announced that it was organising several drag queen storytelling events which would expose children to a drag performers. Now, there were concerns which were raised over the potential adult content that the children attending would face. I'll be joined in the studio by the CEO of Turning Point UK, Jack Ross, to discuss this. But first, let's get your latest weather.
Hello, I'm Craig Snow and here is your latest forecast from the Met Office. As we head into a new working week, it's set to remain settled for all of us, but it will still feel fairly chilly out there, especially in the east and the south. So as we finish the weekend and go into the new working week, high pressure is firmly in charge across the country, keeping things largely dry. A fair bit of cloud around across eastern Scotland and northern England this evening, but elsewhere
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world. The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour. If you just tuned in, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's fast approaching 25 minutes after 5 o'clock. Now, I'm asking, would you take your child to a Drag Queen Story Hour? Now, the LGBT plus children's education event, Drag Queen Story Hour, faced protests from Turning Point UK yesterday. The protesters were critical of the event, raising the concern of the drag story hour not being age appropriate, stressing that young people should not be subjected to predominantly adult content and that there are other ways to educate children about diversity and standing up for what they believe in. In an interview with Turning Point, UK Deputy Chair of the Tory party, Lee Anderson, had this to say.
Never been subject to drag queen story hour, but there's a time and a place for drag queens, and that's firmly in the cabaret clubs in places like Blackpool and the big cities in this country. I don't think there's a place for it in schools or in training sessions in companies. It should be in cabaret clubs, as simple as that.
So, what do you think? Does a drag race story hour, or drag queen story hour, somebody put drag race, I don't know what they were thinking there, drag queen story hour belong in the curriculum of children, or is educating with predominantly adult-orientated performers a bit much? Others would argue in favour of drag story hour and say that it's positive for kids to be exposed to this so that they can learn about LGBT people and celebrate diversity. So what do you think? For the great British debate this hour, I'm asking, would you take your child to a drag queen story hour performance? I'm joined now by political commentator Sam Dowler and also CEO of Turning Point UK, Jack Ross. Wow, Sam Dowler, he's out there in Australia. You put on a bit of weight, Sam. What's going on with you? Or are you too close to the camera? Sit back a bit. Well, I'm going to start... I'll start with Jack, because Jack Ross was there. He's from Turning Point UK. You were at this protest. You set up this protest. Why? Talk to us about it.
So I think the key thing to understand with this protest is we aren't there to protest drag events for over 18s. What we are protesting is adult performers having events with children and children being exposed to these adult performers, which in this case is drag queens. It's tricky because we did research on the Honour Oak pub where we had our demonstration, and we found that every drag performer we looked into had age-inappropriate content on their social media.
Wow.
And also moonlights as adult drag queen performers. And so what it boils down to is we think that these adult entertainers were unsuitable role models for children, and so we disagree and believe there's a safeguarding issue with them performing in front of kids.
Well, Sam, how can you disagree with that? That sounds pretty thorough. They've looked on the websites or wherever the social media of these people are there, and they've got a lot of adult content on there that's targeted at adults.
Well, obviously, I mean, I'd like to know if he's been to a drag queen story hour, first of all, because the content is not age inappropriate, and I would say what was inappropriate would be to have a bunch of big scary men shouting at women and children in the street and having the police having to be there. They were out, your protest was outnumbered 21 by people who were supportive of the LGBT community and of the pub and of the parents and of the children. None of them wanted you to be there. You've never been to a drag queen story hour, so you don't know what the content was going to be, and it's really none of your business. And surely this is, we're all about being anti-cancel culture, and that's exactly what you try to do, cancel something that you have no idea what it's all about.
Well, Jack, I mean, he's saying...
So, as I mentioned when I started, we're not here to cancel drag queens. What we are is to stop drag queens performing for children, particularly drag queen adult performers performing for children. Our intention was never to go directly outside the Honour Oak pub. You can check that with the police. We always said we'd be on the other side of the road, and we were slightly down the road because of the counter-protesters there. So we understood there wasn't a potential problem with us being there and scaring kids, and that's not what we were there to do. We weren't there to shut down the event, which is what was falsely advertised. We were there to raise awareness about an issue. So we were here to say to the Honour Oak pub, you should reconsider. If you want to have drag performers, we've seen they've Drag Story Brunch, which is meant to be an over-18 event. They let kids in. We saw videos showing they let kids into these age-inappropriate events. So we're saying they should follow the law. If a strip club, for example, let in kids, it would be shut down and social services would be let in. So why are they allowing kids to age-inappropriate events? Why aren't they IDing people? If they ID'd people, we wouldn't be there. We wouldn't see a need to be there. But what we're doing is safeguarding children. And you mentioned, some of the parents who take the kids there disagree with us, but we had multiple parents from Lewisham come up to us at our protests and say, thank you for being here, well done for being here. We're too scared to stand with you because we're worried about the leftist mob coming and attacking us or trying to throw bricks through our windows. And so we aren't going to stand with you, but thank you so much for being there. So some of the locals did want us there.
What would you say to that, Sam? I mean, that is really, this whole movement is one of literally fear. You're not allowed to say that you don't like something. And as Jack was doing, exercising his own right to freedom of expression and protesting about Drag Queen Story Hour. I don't think I'd want my kids to go to those. I wouldn't have them going, to be honest.
Yeah, and if that's what you want, then absolutely right, Nana, because they are your children and it's your decision. This parents were there with their own children, and it was their decision to take them there, and they had a lovely time. And I'm not really sure what business it is of Turning Point to tell other people how to raise their children. I certainly know that if somebody told him or anyone else there what they could do with their own children, they wouldn't like it, and they would certainly get quite annoyed. And also, I have to say that, of course, drag queens is often an adult entertainment. It's it's innuendo, etc. But has he heard of something called panto, which has been around for a very long time, decades and decades, and it's all about innuendo, and kids have been going to that for such a long time and having a great time. I mean, have you taken your kids there? I did an interview with Lawrence Fox the other day on this channel, and he said that he'd taken his kids to bands and they had a lovely time. So I mean, I don't know what the point is. You seem to have just wasted a lot of police time and scared a lot of children, which I don't see what the point of that was.
So I think there's a stark difference between pantomimes and drag queen. The idea of pantomimes is it's meant to be a joke, a man dressed up in a dress and they're almost like a clown. It's not a interactive, direct interaction with children. Whereas with the drag queens, you often have men dressed in provocative outfits who are adult performers having direct contact with children, often unsupervised as well. So we don't necessarily know that these sessions are innocent. So yeah, I think it is quite a disingenuous argument to compare pantomimes to the Drag Queen Story Hour.
Well, obviously there's no actual... Sorry, I was just going to say that obviously we're not suggesting that any of these performers have done anything with the children, but what we're suggesting and what Jack is suggesting is that perhaps it's inappropriate for them to be actually doing this, thing as they are also adult performers.
You've got to think about it. So say you've got Mr. Tumble on CBeebies. If a kid then goes and Googles Mr. Tumble, his private TikTok or his Instagram, and there's public videos, not age-restricted, of him twerking and swearing, what sort of role model is that for children? We have a lot of respect for child entertainers throughout Britain because they're trusted as role models for kids to encourage good behaviour. What we don't want is to encourage children to pick up negative role models and negative behaviour from that. We don't want 5-year-olds twerking. We don't want 5-year-olds swearing. And you mentioned as well, parents should be able to decide what their kids get up to. But we have laws for a reason. We have guidelines for a reason. You wouldn't be comfortable with an adult giving vodka to a child, or there's rules and customs for a reason, to protect children, to protect children's innocence, and to help them develop into good human beings.
Final word to you, Sam. You've got about 30 seconds.
Of course, I get that, but the parents didn't want you there. The pub didn't want you there. The drag queen didn't want you there. You don't know what the content was. It was like reading from children's books to people. It is akin to being to pantomime and to being a clown. And the drag queen herself said that. So, I mean, you're basically trying to insert yourself into a situation, which of course is not illegal. It's not illegal. Otherwise, of course, they would not be doing it. So we have laws in this country. Nobody wanted you there, and you just wasted yourselves and police time.
We wanted them there. I think there's quite a few people that were glad they were, but I appreciate your thoughts. Sam Downer, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Australia. Thank you so much. He's there on his holiday. He came out to do this for us. Thank you very much, Sam. Have a lovely holiday. And also Jack Ross is the CEO of Turning Point UK. Thank you so much, Jack, for coming in and talking to us about that. Now, in a statement, Charlotte Grant, the landlord of the pub hosting the event, said, "Everyone here at the Honour Oak is proud to serve the wonderful community of Forest Hill. We are here to make sure the local pub is safe, warm and fun place for everyone to enjoy. This event has been running for over a year and is incredibly popular in Lewisham. Our magical storytelling event is entirely age-appropriate and allows families and friends to come together and listen to a reading of a storybook and have fun. The most important thing for us is that everyone is safe and happy when they are here. And we have been overwhelmed by the support people have shown us locally and nationally, and we are proud to run their local pub." Well, lots of you have been getting in touch with your views as to whether you take your child to a Drag Queen Story Hour. Cal says, no, definitely not. Ross says, it honestly depends on what they're specifically teaching them. I'll decide on the case-by-case basis. Jonathan says, I'm sceptical of who Drag Queen Story Hours are for. To me, it doesn't seem to be particularly important for a young child. Good thoughts, keep them coming. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We will continue with our great British debate this hour. I'm asking, would you take your child to a Drag Queen Story Hour? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
35 minutes past 5, I'm Ray Addison. It's been confirmed that the President of the European Commission will visit the UK tomorrow to continue talks with the Prime Minister over the Northern Ireland Protocol. In a statement released by Number 10, it said Rishi Sunak and Ursula von der Leyen will continue attempts to find solutions to challenges resulting from the post-Brexit trading arrangements. It comes after the Prime Minister said he's hopeful of achieving a positive outcome by the end of this weekend. The DUP has refused to form an executive at Stormont in protest over the current Brexit deal. MP Sammy Wilson saying that the party hasn't seen any proposal yet.
What we do know is that there doesn't appear to have been any deal on the central issue which affects Northern Ireland, and that is the imposition of EU law. All of the problems that we face with not able to get goods from GB, checks on goods coming from GB and disruption to our economy stems from the fact that we're under a different set of laws than the rest of the United Kingdom, and therefore checks are required to make sure we're complying not with British law but with Brussels law.
58 people have died after a ship got into difficulties off Italy's south coast. 27 bodies were found on a beach in the southern region of Calabria, and more have been found in the water. It's reported that the boat left from Turkey and was carrying migrants from Somalia, Pakistan and Afghanistan when it crashed against rocks during rough sea weather. There are 81 survivors, with 22 in hospital. Social housing managers will be required to study for qualifications to drive up standards following the death of a 2-year-old boy. Awab Ishak died in December of 2020 from a respiratory condition caused by mould at his home in Rochdale. Housing Secretary Michael Gove is announcing that the plan after acknowledging that social housing residents are being inexcusably let down. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. This is the People's Channel, GB News. Back to Nana in just a moment.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As it's coming up to 41 minutes after 5 o'clock, this is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now it's time for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, would you take your child or a child to a drag queen story hour? Now, the LGBT plus children's education event, Drag Queen Story Hour, faced protests from Turning Point UK yesterday. The protesters were critical of the event, raising the concern of Drag Story Hour not being age appropriate, worrying young people should not be subjected to predominantly adult content, and that there are other ways to educate children about diversity and standing up for what they believe in. So does Drag Queen Story Hour belong in the curriculum of children, or is educating with predominantly adult-orientated performers a bit much? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, would you take your child or a child to a Drag Queen Story Hour? Let's see what my panel make of that. Joining me, of course, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Danny Kelly, you laughed.
Well, I find that... Look, for the benefit of the radio listeners, we saw an example of a drag queen. It's quite obviously a big butch bloke in a wig and a skimpy outfit. I find that repellent. I'm sorry. I just find that so unnatural. And it doesn't make me a bigot. It just makes me a normal bloke. I was listening to Calvin driving down on the show before yours, Nana, and he was at the protest, and he's right. He said that the papers will be full of far-right conflation. What's it got to do with far-right politics? The fact that you object to a child of 4 or 5 or 6 years of age actually having to sit in front of a bloke in a dress with a wig on. You should do that. Forgive me, I may be lambasted in seedy parts of Soho. You shouldn't do it in front of kids in school.
Yeah, but some people would say that, I mean, and as Sam said, it's a bit like pantomime, really, isn't it?
No, it's not.
That's what Sam said.
Well, Sam, in my view, is wrong, because pantomime is full of hundreds of different characters, whereas there are lots of distractions, and it's not just one character. I saw a bit of the television, and it's basically this big butch bloke, looks like a pub doorman, in a skimpy outfit with a wig, loads of makeup, with his legs akimbo, legs apart. I know, with kids at that sort of height, eyesight height, talking to them about... I don't know what he was talking to them about. Nothing like a pantomime.
No. Nothing like... Well, a pantomime, of course, in a pantomime... Sam is right to the extent that in a pantomime you get men dressed as women, and it's all part of the pantomime tradition. But the jokes in a pantomime... That's what, I mean, I've done panto twice. I absolutely adore it. But the jokes are on 2 levels. There's the stuff that the kids get, and then there's the odd sort of innuendo that the parents get. It is... You cannot equate drag queen acts. And some of the stuff that I've seen on social media of these drag queen acts are... depraved, to be honest, and that the way they are gyrating and displaying themselves in sexual gestures, twerking and stuff like that, which I gather is one of the words, is absolutely repellent. And the idea that young children should be made to watch that. I mean,
but at the story hour, but at the story hour,
head examined.
Yeah, but at the story hour, that's not happening, so they're not doing that. But the argument was that Jake made was that they have on their social media some content that is age inappropriate, yet they are doing things, going to these story hours with the children, which I think is, to me, where it crosses the line. Nobody cares. I don't care if someone wants a drag queen or not. If I want to go to a drag queen performance, I'd love to go. I've been to a few. It's great. I love it. But I don't, for me personally, think that should then migrate into something, that sort of character should then be used to promote stories to children, only because especially if that person themselves has all this adult content and then they are then going to do that. I couldn't, if I go to schools, I go and lecture at schools, if I was doing some sort of very sexualised stuff and then I was going in to teach as a teacher, I don't think that my employer would be happy with that at all.
What's it also got to do with the LG? I've lost track of how many initials. What's it got to do with LGBTQ+? What's it got to do with homosexuality? Why are they the counter-protesters?
There's trans as well, so it's also the collection of different...
What annoys me is that if you object to...
You're a far-right Nazi.
Exactly. You're a far-right and you're a homophobe, which is completely untrue. You're just trying to protect children.
You're just a normal
man or woman. The innocence of childhood needs to be... They don't need to know about all that sort of
Do you think, though, that you're looking at it as an adult looking over, having the understanding of the bigger picture of a drag queen and seeing what you see as an adult as a drag performance, whereas the children are on a different level and they're just seeing a guy who's dressed as like a woman, dressed as a woman, telling a story in a wonderfully sort of animated manner, which is what children love. I mean, they love that. They won't see the layer that you're seeing.
OK, I would question what's motivating. What's the background to this? Why are they having a pub doorman in a skimpy dress wearing a thong and a wig? Queen? OK, why are you doing this to young kids with his legs akimbo?
Do stop, please.
And the kids are at the height. I've seen it.
Stop it.
It's awful.
If you want to go and have a look at the picture, you can go online or check out, download the GBNews app where you can actually take a look and watch the show. Stream it live on YouTube now.
There are plenty of people capable of telling an animated story that will really get children's attention. They can do they can dress up, etc. Why do you need a drag queen to do it? It's inappropriate.
But I suppose...
Inappropriate.
Look, I personally don't think it's appropriate at all, but...
You'd be a wonderful storyteller, for example.
I love telling stories.
Yes.
I'm always telling stories.
Kids are such a fabulous audience.
I tell my son stories all the time, and the bigger my eyes go, I go, and then this happened, and he goes,
That's right.
And his eyes are like saucers, and they go big, and I love it when their eyes go big. So I love telling stories, and I do. If anyone wants me to do a bit of storytelling, I'm up for that. But, but I just, for me personally, don't think that somebody who's doing something adult on a website, whether they're a drag queen or whether they're an adult performer in any way, should then be performing for children in some way.
It's a Trojan horse approach. This is a Trojan horse.
Trojan horse.
This is a complete acceptance of a certain ideology at a young age, OK? It's an indoctrination process. Trojan horse, accept that, because when you get older, that's going to be a societal norm.
And it demonises people like us who don't think it's appropriate. It demonises us as far-right, homophobic, etc.
Because there are some parents who think it's perfectly fine. I mean, I just don't.
Well, let them send their kids.
Well, that's what they're doing. See, that's the thing.
Take your kids to where drag acts are performing. Don't let the drag acts come into schools and libraries.
Or perhaps if you're going to take your kids to drag act performance, you should perhaps go and do a bit of Googling on the drag act performer and see whether they're doing some adult odd content and then decide, because I think that's important to know. I think, and I don't know whether the DBS checks, I presume they are, but I just think that ultimately if they're going to be doing that, they need to have a DBS check to make sure that there's nothing untoward there. I have to have one when I go into schools, and I also think that parents should have a look on social media and see whether there is some inappropriate content on those websites.
Too many parents are too busy to bother to check out what their children are. That is one of the problems.
I will make time for that if my school dared even suggest it. Well, this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voice onto the show. Your opportunity to tell us what you think about the topics we're discussing today. I've got 4 of them. Yeah. Let's start with David Balm. He's there in Watford. David Balm, what do you think? Drag Queen Story Hour.
Hi, Nana. Hi, Danny and Christine. Actually, personally, I have no problem with drag queens at an older age, but not at primary school. And that's what these stories are aimed at. Years and years ago, we were coming home from holiday, my then 8-year-old son said to me, Dad, why is that man wearing a wig that's falling off, and why is his legs getting open? He was very confused by, and obviously a trans man. And I don't think it's appropriate for anyone who is trans or trying to indoctrinate children to what is the norm in their eyes. There's nothing wrong with trans, nothing wrong with LGBTQ plus, etc. But let's leave children at primary school to enjoy life and exploring normality, as we see it, before they explore other types and into their teens.
People, David, would say the child doesn't see that, but thank you so much for your thoughts. Let's go to Gareth Wynne-Jones, who's in Snowdonia. Gareth, would you take your child to one of these things?
As somebody that dressed up over Christmas as a drag act, and there was a lot of rugby players, there's a lot of butch blokes there, and it was a fancy down in South Wales with a lot of people that had a lot of fun, and there was a great drag act there as well. I don't see any problem in it, but I do feel a little bit worried that, that they're going into schools to push this kind of scenario. And I think, it does need to be looked at, and it does need to be, done privately. If people want to go and see a drag act tell a story, and they could pay and go and see it. I wouldn't want to see it into schools and forced onto children. And parents should be really, really watching for these kinds of things, because it shouldn't happen. And look, I'm not homophobic. We had the best night ever dressed as a... I'll send you a picture after.
Well, actually, if you could. Listen, we're running out of time, Gareth, but make sure you send me that picture. It's Gareth Wynne-Jones there. Right, let's have a chat with Miranda Richardson, not the Miranda Richardson, but the one in Northamptonshire. Miranda, what's your view? You've got about 30 seconds.
Hi, Nana. Very quickly then, first thing, if they're going into schools, they're not going to throw away the rule book, which is DBS check, do all the appropriate things. They're not going to, that's going to be first and foremost child safety. The second thing is called a drag act. That's what they're doing. It's an act. And it be it on a straight day, storytelling day, or be it in an adult-only nightclub performing on the high end. I think for the children, they're going to see the bright, they're going to see the colours, they're going to see the hair, they're going to see the makeup. It's a character. That's what the kids are looking at, as a character. And we could get tied down in sitting legs akimbo and all the rest of it. You can have some teachers that sit on that point, not just drag acts. Let's bear that in mind.
Miranda, good thoughts there. And lastly, let's go to Lee Webb, who's there in Bedford. Lee, would you take a child to drag queen story hour? You've got 5 of them. You've got 5 kids. Lee, would you have taken your kids there?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't take my child to see a drag act. Drag acts belong in working men's clubs and cabaret clubs. Now, I'm the father of my eldest son, who happens to be homosexual. We knew that quite early on. However, it is up for parents to take them through that journey, and it's up to qualified sex educationists to take them through that journey, not drag queens. They have like I said, they've got their place at working men's clubs, etc., not teaching our kids about sexuality, etc.
So thank you so much for your thoughts, Lee. Yeah, very interesting from the panel there. David in Watford, thank you. Gareth in Snowdonia. Don't forget, send me that picture, Gareth. Lee in Bedford, Miranda in Northamptonshire. Thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you all. Right, moving on to another story that caught my eye today. Crimes with no charges. Police have always been bad at catching thieves, but new data suggests that charge rates have fallen more dramatically among the most common crimes than the public are likely to witness. Take burglaries, for example. The year of 2022 saw a total of about 151,806 residential burglaries, and that only 5,000 to just over were solved. That's 3.7% of the offences. Wow. So what do you think then? Let's see what my panel... Do you think that the police are any good? Just a brief one, yes or no?
Yes, I do. Warwickshire Police, I think, are very good. I've never had to call them for anything. As far as burglaries are concerned, the Yanks have got it right. It's a home invasion. It's something that some people never get over. And for the victims of burglaries, to only have a 3% success rate must be heartbreaking.
Well, listen, we haven't got time to ask you, Christine, but let's start with Supplements Sunday. Let's do our supplements instead, because my panel are going to discuss some of the top stories that caught their eye. Christine Hamilton, you're there, broadcaster Christine Hamilton and Danny Kelly joining me. Christine, what have you got? You've got about 30 seconds.
Right. Well, this is cleaners wanted must scrub loos, empty bins and promote diversity. They must demonstrate a commitment to equality and diversity. This is public sector jobs are asking cleaners, builders, electricians, chefs to display a commitment to equality and diversity. It's ridiculous. They just need to do their job well. It's a moral madness that's overtaken everything.
Isn't it
madness.
Ridiculous? Danny, what have you found?
OK, it's about food. It's about air fryers.
Oh, God, here we go.
It's about air fryers. I haven't got one, but there's a massive worldwide recall.
Yeah.
2 million air fryers. I can't remember the name of the manufacturer, so just Google it. But all of my pals who have them absolutely love them, the air fryers. I don't know whether you have an air fryer. It costs a fraction of what it would to heat an oven if you're going to cook a roast chicken and roast potatoes and sausages and all of that high-calorie stuff. And anyway, so there you go.
I have got one. I've never used it because I've got an Arga. It was idiotic to buy it. I don't need it because I don't have it sitting there all the time.
With an Arga.
Right, well, I bought it to do chips for Neil, but I haven't done them yet.
And finally, my one is about, well, no rest for the wicked, former Health Secretary Matt Hancock. What's happened to Matt Hancock? Oh. Somebody's done something to my...
Started a TV company, I think.
He
£370
started his
million
own TV
television company.
He's obviously going to go into television, and he wants to get the moolah for himself rather than paying another television company. Here we are.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much to that clever person who decided to delete whatever it was in the auto cue for me. Yes, so he set up this TV company, but we haven't got time for my one now anyway. Well, listen, thank you so much, my wonderful panel. Christine Hamilton. Christine, thank you so much. Lovely to see you as
Pleasure,
ever.
anytime.
And also the lovely Danny Kelly. A pleasure.
Thank you. Heads will roll about that. Heads
Your head might roll. There's somebody's head back there, Will.
Bad book.
And listen, a huge thank you to you at home for your company. It's been such a pleasure as ever. I'll see you next week, same time, same place. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, I'm Craig Snow and here is your latest forecast from the Met Office. So as we head into a new working week, it's set to remain settled for all of us, but it will still feel fairly chilly out there, especially in the east and the south. So as we finish the weekend and go into the new working week, high pressure is firmly in charge across the country, keeping things largely dry. A fair bit of cloud around across eastern Scotland and northern England this evening, but elsewhere actually quite a lot of clear skies. So under the clear skies it will turn pretty chilly, widespread frost. Could even see temperatures as low as about -8 or -10 across parts of Scotland. But where we do see the clear skies as we start Monday morning, it'll be a frosty but bright start to the day. Plenty of sunshine first thing. But the cloud across northern England, eastern Scotland would have sunk its way into parts of Wales and the Midlands during the night. And as we go through the course of Monday, quite a lot of England, Wales, Northern Ireland, rather cloudy with maybe the odd spot of rain coming and going from the North Sea. Best of the sunshine up across western Scotland, and in the sunshine, not feeling too bad, 7 or 8 degrees here. Elsewhere, around where they should be, but factor in a fairly brisk wind, it will certainly feel a bit colder than that. Tuesday, a very similar day. Still got that brisk wind off the North Sea, especially down towards East Anglia and the southeast in parts of England. These showers here could turn wintry at times, but certainly not amounting to anything on the surface, really. And for most, again, temperatures around where they should be for the time of year. And very little changes as we go